Everyone. I am Jacqueline Miller, and I will serve as the host for today's National Call for Unity. Please turn your attention to our interpretation team.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for that. So yes, this event is going to be also provided in Spanish, so I'm going to give those instructions in Spanish for everyone that is here. But first of all, we'd like to thank the organizers of this event for their commitment to language justice and to creating these multilingual spaces. So muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos a este gran evento. Obviamente queremos darle las gracias a los organizadores de este evento por su compromiso con la justicia del lenguaje y con la creación de espacios multilingües. Bueno, en la parte inferior de la pantalla, ustedes para poder escuchar en español van a encontrar un globo al cual deben hacer clic y seleccionar español para poder escuchar. Si se están uniendo en una tableta o en un celular inteligente, por favor, hagan clic en More o Más, donde están los tres punticos como ven en pantalla, con el círculo naranja, y seleccionan Interpretación de idiomas y luego Español. Y no olviden poner finalizado para activar esa función. De esta manera pueden participar plenamente del evento en español. Les agradezco mucho por su atención. I'm going to be posting these instructions in the chat in English and in Spanish as well. Thank you, and back to you, Jacqueline.
Thank you. Please help me welcome Ruth M. Glenn. She serves as the interim CEO for the NRCDV. Ruth has worked and volunteered in domestic violence field for over 27 years and holds a master's in public administration from the University of Colorado Denver program on domestic violence. Ms. Glenn has served on many domestic violence program and funding boards, provided hundreds of presentations on domestic violence victimization and survival, testified before the Colorado State Legislature and the United States Congress, and provided consultation, training, and technical assistance on a local and national level on victim survivor issues. As a survivor, Ruth also often shares her experience to bring awareness about the dynamics of domestic violence. Please welcome Ms. Glenn.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. What a lovely introduction. And before I have the privilege of introducing our guests, I just want to say that I too, somebody wrote in the box earlier about how they look forward to every October and the call for unity. And I feel exactly the same way in a different role currently. But definitely always felt like we began October Domestic Violence Awareness Month with the call of unity from NRCDV. So thank you all so much for being here. And as always, thank you for addressing the issue of domestic violence, as well as joining in the call of in the 2023 National Call for Unity. So our theme for this year is Heal, Hold, and Center. With all of that said, and my opportunity and pleasure is to introduce Acting Assistant Secretary Hild. Jeff Hild is the Acting Assistant Secretary and Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Administration of Children and Families, ACF, at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Mr. Hild was ACF's Chief of Staff from 2014 until 2017, and was most recently a Deputy Assistant Secretary to the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Legislation at HHS, covering the Human Services portfolio, including ACF. Prior to joining the Biden administration in 2021, Hild was the policy director at the Redstone Center at the George Washington University School of Public Health, where his work focused on advancing health equity and addressing adverse childhood experiences through policy change. Born and raised in Baltimore, Hild is a member of the Maryland Bar and a graduate of St. Mary's College of Maryland and the University of Baltimore School of Law. He currently resides in Washington, D.C. with his wife and daughter. With all of that said, we cannot tell you how pleased we are that you are here to join us, Mr. Hild. Thank you all so much.
And thank you, Ruth. And I'm likewise very pleased to be with you all today. And it really is wonderful to help kick off Domestic Violence Awareness Month with everyone. And it truly is an honor to stand in solidarity with all of you who are working to create meaningful change for survivors, children, and families. And so I just want to start by saying thank you to each of you on this call for your tireless and really relentless leadership, partnership, and your advocacy. Every day, you all are the ones leading important change at the community level for survivors and their families that helps them to stay safe and build resilience. And I don't think you can ever be thanked enough for the work that you do. As Ruth said, I'm the Acting Assistant Secretary for the Administration for Children and Families, or ACF, where our mission is to coordinate access to social services and to support the compassionate and effective delivery of human services for all people in this country. And that importantly includes supports for survivors of domestic violence. Domestic violence impacts millions of people each year, but we know that just because that's true now doesn't need to be true forever. We can prevent it, and that requires the collective voice and power of individuals, families, institutions, and systems in order to transform our communities and center those who have been most marginalized. That's why listening to and learning from people with lived experience is a critical component of our strategic plan at ACF. The voices of people with lived experiences ground us all in what matters most for people needing ACF-funded services all across this country. I began my career as a legal aid attorney in Baltimore and represented many survivors. I saw the struggles those clients had in keeping themselves and their children safe while accessing the supports they needed to get back on their feet, often from institutions that seemed to not understand their unique needs and created barriers, whether intentional or not, to accessing the services they needed. Every day we are working to break down those barriers and actualize a vision that all children, youth, families, individuals, and communities are resilient, safe, supported, and economically secure. Violence prevention and equity are at the center of our shared vision for families nationwide. Advancing equity to reduce structural barriers and discrimination that prevent families from having access to resources they need to heal and thrive is at the foundation of our work at ACF. Advocates and survivors have helped us all understand that safety for families means equitable access to housing, to childcare, to Head Start, to TANF benefits, to child support, to health services, and mental health services. The Biden-Harris administration has broadened ACF support for families experiencing domestic violence and sexual assault. Earlier this year, we established the new ACF Office of Family Violence Prevention and Services. This new office reports directly to the ACF Assistant Secretary and is responsible for leading and coordinating all of ACF's work related to family violence prevention. This elevation signifies the absolute priority this administration places on domestic violence prevention. I want to say a bit about what this office, under the leadership of Director Shondell Dawson, who I know is a familiar name to all of you, has accomplished in just 8 months. We have supported the launching of 145 culturally specific domestic violence and sexual assault American Rescue Plan subgrants. This includes 15 subgrants for tribes and tribal organizations serving American Indian and Alaska Native survivors. We expanded support for Native Hawaiian Resource Center on domestic violence, and we have been able to provide $10 million in funding to support states and territories impacted by Hurricanes Fiona and Ian. We're tremendously proud of these historic expansions of community-based support for survivors and their children. As we celebrate these vital new programs, we also don't forget that we still have a long road ahead of us. Ending and preventing domestic violence across generations and in every community will take us all working across our various sectors. And I have no doubt that we'll continue to rise to meet this challenge. I'm excited about the future of our work together, helping survivors access equitable prevention services, housing, and social supports. So I want to close again by thanking all of you for your advocacy. You are the real catalysts for change. And most importantly, you help to hold us in government accountable to act with the urgency that survivors call upon us to act with. And so thank you so much for everything you do. And I'm really grateful for having this opportunity to share space with you today. Thanks.
Thank you, Acting Assistant Secretary Heald. I'd like for us to take a moment to quiet our minds and remember those who are no longer with us due to domestic violence. Now, let's come together as we listen to the universal prayer, recited in English by yours truly, Jacqueline Miller, Director of Racial Equity and Social Change. In Spanish by Yvonne Ortiz, Vice President of Programs, Prevention, and Social Change of NRCDV. In Portuguese by Patty Branco, Senior Technical Assistant and Resource Specialist of NRCDV. And in Creole by Lucene LaFortune. Please listen. I invite you to hold a moment of silence. Divine Spirit, known to us by many names.
Este año nos has puesto a prueba de formas tanto anticipadas e inesperadas. A nivel colectivo e individual, estamos en carne viva, desnudas, pero no podemos volver atrás. En nuestros esfuerzos por erradicar la violencia de género, en nuestra lucha contra los sistemas, las ideologías y los grupos que perpetúan el racismo, la animadversación ante la raza negra y la opresión de voces y cuerpos históricamente marginados. En nuestro intento por lograr la tan ansiada justicia que tanto tiempo llevamos reclamando. En este proyecto, con nuestra obra, nos reunimos hoy aquí.
Pendant n'a entré dans moi conscience action ça, nous prier pour couvrir yeux nous, ban nous nouveau façon pour nous connaissance, pour sentiment et imagination. Les tragédies a menacé fermer que nous, ban nous force pour nous sentir l'espoir. l'espoir sacré nou an. Zanset yo ak jenerasyon ki pral suiv nou, lè ansetitid souke fondasyon nou an, ak pilonen vizyon nou, nan tan kap vini an, fonde nam nou, nan konfians, nan teya an ba pie nou, ak lè ki plen pou moun nou.
When exhaustion seeps into our spirits, help us find deep respite in laughter, tears, community, and reflection. We pray for daring hope, the kind we cannot ignore, a hope undeterred by logic and unrestrained by our immediate reality. We pray for a hope whose current is strong and ceaseless, even when the surface of life's water looks unchanged and unmoved. May we know that there is something greater swirling beneath its exterior at work in our hearts and minds.
Estivermos cansados e desgastados, e não pudermos reunir forças para invocar esperança ante o nosso desespero. Espírito Divino, pedimos que segure nossa mão. Apenas isso nos sustenta. Que saibamos sua presença, mesmo nos momentos em que a questionamos. Caminhe conosco, e em tempos quando não pudermos caminhar, eleve nossos olhos cansados da trincheira do desânimo. Mostre-nos que, ainda que a estrada adiante seja longa, não andamos sozinhos. Nunca andamos sozinhos e nunca o faremos. Invocamos a tua presença aqui e agora, enquanto recordamos o nosso passado e honramos nosso presente. Una-nos através das nossas realidades virtuais, ante a incerteza que tem definido esse ano de forma cada vez mais potente, ante a nossa humanidade vulnerável e corajosa. Una-nos aqui e agora.
Ayúdanos como colectivo sagrado a imaginar un futuro que aún no podemos ver, pero que sabemos es cierto. Guíanos cuando hablemos con valentía y proclamemos que hay algo más, que en las noches de absoluta oscuridad y en las tormentas de invierno que nos rodean en las montañas hay algo más. Ayúdanos a proclamar todas juntas esta verdad, esta esperanza. Espíritu Divino, oramos para recibir tu inspiración y la tenacidad para lograr manifestarla. A tu luz nos encomendamos en oración.
Na sua luz, oramos.
Nan lumière nou priye.
In your light, we pray. Thank you for joining us for the Universal Prayer and the Moment of Silence. Now, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Maury Danielle is a trauma recovery life coach, survivor advocate, speaker, and author. Maury is the founder of Be Free to Fly International, an advocacy and consulting organization that promotes awareness, intervention, and prevention, and life coaching services for survivors of domestic violence and intimate partner violence. Murray's message has reached thousands of people nationwide and internationally. She believes in community healing and restorative justice through intervention and prevention work regarding domestic violence, self-care, trauma recovery, and parenting workshops. Her reach continues to grow as she hosts and co-hosts community awareness events, She has appeared in publications such as Voyage LA, Shout Out LA, California Health Report, Yes Magazine, Voyage Houston, and various other media outlets. Murray is also an author who wrote and self-published her first personal memoir, Good Morning Nude, and currently working on her second book project with an anticipated release in the fall of 2024. Will you join me in welcoming Maury Danielle?
Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, NRCDV. I just really want to say thank you for having me. When you guys invited me to be a part, I was honored, and I am honored. And the first person I thought about outside of myself as a survivor, I thought about my grandmother, who was a survivor of domestic violence and who did not have a voice. And I remember when I was going through my journey, something that was said to me that stood out was that domestic violence thrives in silence. And so I thank God that when I finally got the courage to speak up and to speak out, that people believed me. As a domestic violence survivor, I often think about how domestic violence, intimate partner violence, it does not discriminate race, color, gender, creed. And it makes me think about cancer. Domestic violence, to me, metaphorically, is like a cancer that seeks to kill, steal, and destroy the lives of so many. And it has to be exposed. It has to be cut out. And metaphorically, I believe that body, which is the survivor, the families, our community, we must heal. It is a public health emergency, and it is an issue. And so I think about when I think about my own story, I think of the quote by Zora Neale Hurston: "If you are silent about your pain, they will kill you and say you enjoyed it." And that's what my journey reminded me of, because as a survivor advocate, first and foremost, I'm a mother of two amazing children, and our lives were completely flipped upside down by what we experienced. And even thinking about my own life, from childhood even to the time of being in a domestic violence relationship, looking at how I was exposed to harm and unprotected in various ways in my life, which brought about adverse childhood experiences. And I thought about that for my own children. And so as a domestic violence survivor, as an intimate partner survivor, a survivor of sexual assault, narcissist abuse, extreme complex trauma is what I can say to you. I dealt with it all: psychological, physical, emotional, financial, spiritual. I dealt with stalking, isolation, threats of guns, just extreme trauma. And with that, I will say that my abuser was, former abuser, was very well spoken, was witty, charming, charismatic, financially secure, was someone that seemingly was a great father and husband, but at the core was a master manipulator, a narcissist, a cheater, a harasser. I mean, I dealt with it all, and it took a lot to get the help that me and my children needed. But I think, as acting Secretary Hill mentioned, the unique needs of survivors, the equitable access to resources. I thank God for those resources that my family and I were able to get in order to be free from the effects of domestic violence. But why I chose this path as to take my pain and to turn it into purpose work, because the post recovery, the trauma recovery is also equally as important as getting free from domestic violence. And I often think of how Hollywood is doing. To me, they're doing a good job of bringing more movies and more more films to the forefront. It's things like Invisible Man, Leo Whannell. He did a metaphoric movie on gaslighting and manipulating, because one of the things when I thought about speaking today was like, what will I say? Having the opportunity to not just speak on behalf of my grandmother, but speak on behalf of so many survivors, is intimate partner violence. It doesn't have scars, visible, physical scars, but the emotional, the psychological, there's so many things that happen with intimate partner violence, and it's very, very hard to explain to people who've never experienced it, who've never gone through it. One way it was explained to me was like mental gymnastics, and it truly is. The things that my family, myself, and children experienced were, we lost our home. We went into shelter. I lost my career, finances. I went through extreme chronic health issues. I had to relocate, and even in the midst of that, thankfully, I was granted a domestic violence restraining order and a criminal protective order. But even in that, my abuser still continued to violate those orders. And I always think of an order as almost like an alarm system on your home, where it is a great tool and a great resource that we have as survivors, but ultimately it's a deterrent. So what really has saved my life and what really has given me my power back is to speak up, is to share, is to encourage others in the struggle, in the resiliency that you need, because I went through, which is where my book came from, but I went through debilitating depression. I've had trouble with my short-term memory, anxiety, low self-esteem. I suffered in silence for so many years because of pride and humiliation of how did I get here? And just through the process, it has, in a lot of ways, I was lacking unconditional love, even for myself. And so I will say that the recovery side of it is so important, because what survivors need is housing, oftentimes relocation expenses, medical expenses, legal fees, therapy, schooling. I was left with a ton of debt by my ex-abuser, just a lot of different things that happen. And so what I really want people to know, what I want survivors to know, is that I'm passionate about inspiring, encouraging survivors, those that are suffering in silence, those that are suffering from the effects of abuse, that they can transform their pain into purpose. It is a journey. And as I once heard someone tell me, that the road to healing is not linear. It can look in various shapes and forms, but the art of finding grace and peace in the midst of our adversity is what's important. And I believe that the road to recovery can be an amazing path of self-discovery, because this is what this journey has looked like for me. I would not have chosen this path of purpose work, but through the journey, I found myself, and I discovered that the greatest gifts are often hidden in the most difficult and painful layers of our lives. And so for me, it was important to change the trajectory of my family's current and future generations, making it paramount to living and experiencing true generational healing. And this is why I'm passionate about trauma recovery. My family suffered through decades of generational trauma and domestic violence, and I made a decision that it must stop with me. As a mother, I wanted it to stop and not filter through my daughter or my son. My spiritual belief and my faith led me out, and I thank God, because God did for me what I could not do for myself. But I thank God for the community, for the advocates in the field, the people that listened and heard my story and believed my story. And so um, I just thank God for finding my voice, and I encourage the survivors out there that are listening to find your voice, to speak up for yourself. You are loved, you are seen, you matter, you are enough. And so I'm thankful again for this platform and the opportunity to share. I leave you with a quote by Dr. Maya Angelou: "I come as one, but I stand for 10,000, or I stand as 10,000, because I believe that it does take a village, and it does take a community of support. And I thank you for this opportunity to speak and share. God bless.
Thank you, Maury Danielle. We at NRCDV, we know that domestic violence is preventable. And we know, based on our theory of change, if we center the lives of survivors, those who are most marginalized, we will obtain safe communities. And we also like to thank FIPSA for funding this event today. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Jorge Vidal, founder of Intercambios, a bilingual cultural strategy enterprise that ignites, mobilizes, and restores the inner power through healing and economic justice. He is a cultural strategist and social justice practitioner with over 2 decades of experience advocating for cultural organizations and survivors. Jorge's experience in the domestic violence and HIV/AIDS movement has included serving as a race equity consultant, masculinity advisor, and cultural consultant for various nonprofit organizations, including those led by Black, Indigenous, transgender, queer, and brown individuals, as well as universities, vocal funders, health departments, and domestic and sexual violence coalitions, amongst others. Please join me in welcoming Jorge.
Thank you, Jacqueline, so much. And thank you, NRCDV, for inviting me and being in this space. I am so thankful. And I love the picture. I didn't provide my picture, but I think the heart represents a lot of the work that I do. I think as a context, what I birth or what I create, is what I wanted to have as a survivor, as a practitioner, going through the journey of healing and economic justice. So a lot of my offerings become the resources I wished I had in the beginning. And I often focus on engaging men because I feel that there's a lack of holistic approaches to healing for engaging men. And there's also a lack of healing center approaches in our organizations, and it often becomes a second thought in most of our organizations. So a lot of our work is focused on shifting into a more healing approach through a sustainable practice, so we can really embody cultural leadership, and then also to liberate ourselves and have cultural reclamation. So a lot of our healing approaches has been through cultural reclamation. In the next 5 minutes, I really want to focus on exhale. I think that we do a lot of work when we come together in deep breath, but I think what exhale, or focusing on the exhale part of healing, has given me the ability to release tension in my body. As a survivor, as you know, violence erupts you the ability often to feel, because a lot of the violence that you experience as a survivor, you want the violence to go as fast as possible. So what we start doing is start to numb our bodies through sensations for safety. And so what I have learned is to take deep exhales as a way not only to calm my nervous system, but as a way to release the tension that for so long has held me down, has created tension in my body, robbing me away from joy, from people, deep relationships, and then also from figure out what is a safety place for me. And so one of the questions, or one of the things that I start to notice in my body was how do I reclaim balance, joy, in order for me to be whole, and also for me to continue to do this work. And so one of the things that I have incorporated in a lot of the work that I have done is body, mind, and spirit healing work, which I think is really, really important for me. And what I started to do is to listen to my body, to the way that it moves, the rhythm of my body, in order to release the tension that has been created by the violence. And instead of fighting or fleeing situations, I started to embrace what I was feeling. I was giving myself compassion, love, curiosity, but most importantly, I gave myself empowerment, self-talk. Instead of shameful messages, through affirmations, I began to see the shift. I started to connect to my bodies, like I said, to my body's rhythm. This awareness allowed me to see that violence creates a shift, an imbalance of energy. I felt weighed down by the energy of violence for too long, and I wanted to release some of the energy that was stuck in my body. And because I'm also a Cancerian, I think I tapped into the energetic, empathetic side that has given me an awareness to notice that a lot of the community that I was working with was also having the burden of a negative energy around them. So I became curious and wondering what happened to the member, to the person that I was holding space to. What conditions must have been in place for this person to not feel joy, for not being present, for being disconnected. That curiosity to me shifted the way that I did the work. And what I started to notice was that a lot of the men that I was holding space for had been through sexual trauma. And so instead of having negative or shameful conversations of high risk around HIV, I began to notice and making the connection between sexual trauma and HIV risk. And this curiosity led me to discover, has led me to discover this shift in a lot of ways in the way that I do this work. And one of the things that I did notice is that I had tons of ideas on how to engage and make changes and transform the work. But because a lot of my first jobs was as a frontline worker, I realized that there wasn't a lot of opportunities for frontline workers who are holding space, who are working with community. And what I noticed from myself as a frontline worker was that we as frontline workers have this cosmic dance that we do with community. We have a superpower to have trust and access. And what we needed more of was for us to be centered, for us, for our voices, for our ideas, for our creativity to be really centered, honored. But in many of the places that I was navigating, many organizations did not provide that opportunity. So what I began to do is work on myself, writing down my ideas, my thoughts, and the ways that I wanted to create change. And so a lot of the work that I think that we need to do in order to shift the way that we do the work is to really center cultural leadership, center cultura in a lot of the work that I do. And it's why that a lot of the work is releasing or tapping into cultural leadership. So I always think that if you're a cultural leader who often are not given the opportunity of leadership, is to write down all your ideas, your thoughts, your creativity, until you find the right place, the right people, because what has saved me in a lot of ways has been community and people who have believed in me, who have believed in my leadership, have believed the way that I wanted to envision this work. And I always say, and I love this quote from Moonlight Gratitude, and it says, the only thing that can affect our lights are our thoughts and how we perceive ourselves. If we allow other person's thoughts or opinions to contribute to our self-doubt, our lights dim. And so the way that I work with cultural leaders is through reflection, is through cultural reclamation, is through tapping into our own leadership. So I wanted to give and provide some reflection questions for people who are on their journey of discovering their true leadership, connecting through their cultura, in their healing journey, and not healing journey that we have overcome a situation of violence, because sometimes we could be in the beginning stages, sometimes we could be in the middle stages of our recovery, or sometimes we have been in advance, but we reverse back to some of the triggers that often violence creates. Wherever you are in your journey, I think we should celebrate just for putting our foot forward and saying yes to ourselves, because I think a lot what violence does, it robs us the ability of joy in seeing ourselves and our authentic power. So I have some questions as reflection as we are thinking through cultural leadership. And these are some questions that I lead some of the cultural leaders with. How do I celebrate myself? How can I set myself free from the spell of people and places? How do I bring my ancestors forward and dance with their wisdom and strength? How do I say no to people, places, situations that do not value me? How do I embrace my flaws and see them as uniqueness, remembering that my present is enough in this place, in this work? What is my sazon to this world and to the work? And what changes do I want to see? So with that, I leave you with those reflection questions. I say thank you for the space, and I pass it on to you, Jacqueline.
Thank you. Thank you, Jorge Vidal. And thank you very much for those reflection questions that you left us with. And now our final speaker is Toshira Maldonado. In 1998, while working as a file clerk temp at the local substance use treatment facility, she embraced her calling to support vulnerable pregnant women in her community. With a heritage deeply rooted in Gullah Geechee birth traditions and generations of birth workers in her family, she naturally befriended and aided pregnant women facing substance use challenges and life-threatening illnesses. These same women face the intersections of systemic trauma through CPS involvement, poverty, and many suffered from intimate partner violence. Her experience of losing her biological mother in 1997 due to being justice system impacted, racism, and medical maltreatment while being incarcerated in a New Jersey state prison for women. It gave her profound understanding of how social injustices cause harm and disproportionately affects BIPOC, Latinx mothers and parents. These lived experiences shaped her career in public service and social justice. She is the executive director of Most Beautiful Womb Incorporated, a nonprofit dedicated to birth justice and improving the lives of BIPOC, Latinx women, girls, and families. She holds a master's in education with a discipline in trauma and resilience and an undergraduate degree in psychology. She is a COPE trained full spectrum community doula through Common Sense Childbirth Institute. She's a New Jersey Birth Justice Institute Fellow with Ancient Song and a New York University Community Research Fellowship graduate. Among the greatest things in her life is her husband of 25 years and their 5 children. Will you join me in welcoming Toshira Maldonado?
Greetings, everyone. I thank you for this opportunity, to Ruth Glenn and the leadership and constituents of the National Resource Center for Domestic Violence. I thank you for allowing the voice, not only of myself, but for many to be heard as we embark on the month of October to raise awareness and embrace domestic violence and intimate partner violence awareness in our communities. It's very difficult to ignore the shocking statistics that as we hold space today in anticipation of this awareness month, we turn attention not away from the truth, but to the disheartening statistics that can help us heal. BIPOCs and Native Americans continue to be disproportionately impacted by social inequality, social inequities, and social injustices. These ethnic groups have the highest likelihood of experiencing domestic violence, and it's also attached to ancestral traumas. 30% of women experienced intimate partner violence or non-partner sexual violence, and that's approximately 736 million around the world. In New York, Blacks account for 45% of domestic violence related homicide victims, while only accounting for just 21.9% of the population. Most shocking is Oklahoma, which has the highest rates of domestic violence in the nation. Over 49% of women and 40% of men are experiencing or have encountered domestic violence and abuse. In totality, that's nearly half of the entire state's population. Domestic violence has a negative impact on vulnerable children who often become victims of child abuse and neglect themselves. The frames of their lives are forever changed. Some of these children have grown up, and they sit among us in positions of power, in offices of leadership, while their inner child is still broken and oftentimes re-traumatized over and over again. Many years of resilience, resistance, and intentional generational curse-breaking strategies exercised in my own life allowed me to be a survivor. And I won't pass on those same generational traumas that begin with my great-great-grandparents in enslavement and was passed down through the lineages. I'm not alone. Just think, if you were born in 1980 like me, you might be just 4 or 5 years outside of slavery's history. And as I sit here before you today, I'm reminded of the soul work that we all must make the commitment to in order to heal, to restore ourselves, and to constantly and intentionally work at being our highest self. It's our desire as well as our right to reimagine a life without family violence and community violence that inflicts trauma. There are so many others that are on this journey of commitment to us, and this month ahead will be a constant reminder that we all can triumph in pain. In order to hold, heal, and center ourselves and our hearts, the most marginalized populations must address this ancestral trauma that I spoke of, that reaches all the way back over 258 years of enslavement, later reinforced by the egregious 99 years of Jim Crow. And we do this all through raising awareness. Just think of the 14% of time that we have truly been free. Who is creating the blueprint for our healing? Are you a part of that? Well, I am. Our parents and grandparents emerged from an era which promoted social injustice and racial inequality. These two elements alone has been an incubator for the broad civil unrest that welcomed the perils of the breakdown in the BIPOC and Latinx families all across our country, all across our world. These communities that suffer don't suffer alone. Their physical, psychological, and sexual frames of their human existence is almost eradicated. I can't get through this speech without expressing my emotion. I guess you can tell that my eyes are full of tears. I guess you can tell that I have to take a moment and breathe. I breathe for my most powerful ancestor, my mother, who crossed over at 36 years old. I breathe for the thousands and thousands of women who are doing their best to not hand over these traumas to their children. Let us collectively breathe for our policymakers, our law enforcement officers, our child protective service workers, our frontline heroes that now have knowledge of the ancestral trauma and the community healing that's needed in order to forge us in a place that we can collectively be centered. Let us work together to heal our angry husbands, our angry wives, our angry men, our angry women. Our jails are full of angry people. Our schools, where the prison or the school to prison pipeline is being reinforced every day, is full of angry children that for 6.5 hours a day get a temporary escape from the trauma that they go home to. As Jenny Joseph framed the word maternal toxic zones, they're filled with intimate partner violence. What can we do? Today, we can hold ourselves in the highest regard, and through that, we heal together. We can center ourselves in the middle of a presence called faith. We're focused on doing the soul work to create silos of family safety and tribes of security that build stable communities in which we will reject violence and we will call out perpetrators. We're committed to doing the soul work in our communities that will bring balance, repair generational breaches, and within our families and communities, eliminate and eradicate marginalization that keeps us in certain populations, systems impacted. Together, we're committed to creating fortresses of support for our survivors and not demonizing or victimizing them. We'll provide education, and we lean into our faith-based leaders and houses of worship to provide support that challenges us, that holds us accountable, and uplifts us. In my closing, I ask that you breathe with me. I want to share this poem that I wrote about the 9-year-old girl still crying, especially on rainy days. The painful memories of watching her 4'11", roughly 130-pound mother, the color of Hershey chocolate, repeatedly mauled, where blood ran down her face. The chubby kid with curls became a broken child full of sorrow. The screams and the shattered ability to heal shows up on rainy days, but it gets a cloak to protect from the rain each time she walks into the home of another chubby kid with curls. And she assesses the situation and she dries their tears, because that's where the inner child connects and they truly understand and they heal each other. She grew up and she's me. And I ask today that as we move forward toward a call of action, we center our purpose on the collective healing of not only ourselves, but of our communities, our nation. And as we move past the hurt and we move past the pain, let's know that when one of us stands up, we are all seen. When one of us speaks out, we are all heard. And when one of us is touched, we all feel. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Be well.
Thank you, Toshira Maldonado. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I just took a moment and breathed in all this powerful, dynamic, awesome energy and messages in this space today. What an incredible job you've all done. We want to thank each of you, our powerful presenters. You have made this year's call very special. I would also like to thank our funder, the Office of Violence Prevention and Services, Office of FIPSA, to our incredible staff, and to all of you who joined us today. We thank you. Remember to continue to work towards the healing and centering of survivors, especially those who are the most marginalized. Thank you and happy Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We look forward to seeing you, as one of my coworkers say, we look forward to seeing you in these streets here. Have a wonderful day and weekend. Thank you.